Let's learn how sometimes nouns can function as adjectives and how you might diagram that. As you can see here, we have a bunch of what are called compound words. Okay, so we call these compound nouns. Compound nouns. And compound nouns can be two words, as in apple tree or movie theater. One word, run together, water and fall, waterfall, or moonlight. And then also we have hyphenated ones, x-ray, father-in-law, and so on. You can pretty much ignore the one word and hyphenated ones for the purpose of this lesson. It's really the question of what do we do with ones that are two words? How do we actually diagram these? So let's look at an example here. Our first example is I love ice cream. Now, there are lots of guides that suggest that you do what I've done here, which is to put ice cream on the line, the two words right next to each other. But in our guide, we're actually going to do something a little bit different, which is we're going to put one of the nouns typically underneath the line. So let's use another example to see how this works. And our next sentence reads, I see the train station. What you can see here then is that train, which is normally a noun, is part of a compound noun here, so train station, and we've actually put this word underneath to show that it's acting kind of like an adjective to form one particular unit. So that's the approach that we'll be adopting, but there's certainly room for different ways to do this as well. Okay, the next thing we need to know is that sometimes we get actually multiple nouns in a row. So let's look at another example here. And in this case, our sentence reads, he visited an apple tree orchard. As you can see, we have three nouns in a row. So we have apple, tree, and orchard. And to show that apple is modifying tree, which in turn is modifying orchard, we've basically put apple in a line underneath tree. Sometimes we also have what are called possessive nouns. So possessive nouns end in an apostrophe S typically. And to show you how you might do that, so if we don't have an apple tree orchard here, we could have something like my Aunt Jen's orchard. Well, let's start actually just with Jen's. So I'm just going to do this roughly here. So we could put Jen's underneath orchard, right, instead of apple tree. Jen's orchard, you can see this is possessive. And then if we want to complicate it even further, we could say, well, it's Aunt, right, there we go, Aunt Jen's. And if we want to make it even more complicated, we could say it's my aunt, or aunt if you're British, my Aunt Jen's orchard. And my, as we've seen before, is an adjective, so normally it would go kind of on a slanted line. It's a pronoun functioning as an adjective here. But because we're using the same system here, we're basically just adding these little hooks underneath to kind of show what is modifying what. Now, sometimes this is going to look a little bit different, and it really depends again on what is doing the modifying. We could, for instance, have a line underneath. So if we want to say the old man's orchard, we could say, right, man's. So that's our possessive noun. And we could say the, and then we put the other one here. We could say the old man's, because the is not really modifying old. It's going with man directly. And so this could go right under the line as the old man's orchard. Now, sometimes you have to really make decisions because the, okay, could perhaps go with orchard. Is it the orchard, or does the refer more to the old man? And that's really where there's a judgment call sometimes. You're going to have to decide what goes with what, which is not always easy, but that also makes diagramming fun, and then you can argue about it as you please. All right, so that's it for nouns as adjectives.